to virtual confirmation week 2 and actual confirmation week 19. I'm excited to have you here. I know this is a little weird. It's been a little weird for me this last couple weeks now. It's just been kind of chaotic. And I would bet for you guys it's the same way. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope you enjoyed last week's lesson. I felt last week's lesson tied really well into what we've been going through as a country, as a world. And I'm trying to learn all this too. There's a lot of things that, like I stated last week, that have been changing for me. And so feel free to reach out. Feel free to ask questions. I love to talk to you guys. My job still is to deal with you guys and your family. So if there's any way that I can be of help, let me know. So before we jump into what this week's lesson is about, let's remember back our memory verses. At some point, we'll have to have our quiz on these. So the first week, we had the reminder from Pastor Linnea of the cross. The passage is where your treasure is, there my heart will be also, from Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. The next week, we had Pastor Corey giving us, for surely I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for your welfare and not for harm, plans to give you a future with hope, Jeremiah 29:11. So you see, I'm still making sure I'm getting all these correct myself. But we had the reminder image of the Paschal candle and or the baptism candle, the Christ candle, however you want to call it, that's typically up by the baptismal font. The next week we had, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path, from Psalm 119 verse 105 from Pastor Linnea, and the reminder was the aisle candles. We had then last week in the virtual worship, and again, if you didn't catch last week's worship, feel free to check the archive on YouTube. There's right there for you guys to watch. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Romans chapter 35 verse 8. And this week we just got done with the live worship, and the worship verse that Pastor Linnea brought up was from Lamentations chapter 3 verse 22 through 23a. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. What a great verse. What a reminder verse that in all this chaos that we're going through, that every day God is still new and willing to look out and watch out after us. So continue to memorize these, because I feel like as this continues and as things go along and who knows what's coming next, these verses are going to be really positive and powerful for you to remember, because I know for me, these have been helpful just going through this and remembering that God is still there, still taking care of us, and will continue to help us through this. So let's shift gears a little bit, and let's shift from last week where we talked about what are your expectations of yourself, and we had the reading from James. This week we have a reading from Ephesians chapter 6 verses 1 through 4. We're talking about expectations that your parents might have for you. And honestly, I feel that you guys are in this awesome position that I wish that I was in right now. There's been, especially right now for me, being cooped up in an apartment by myself, there's a lot of times that I wish I was around my family. I wish that I was able to spend time with my folks, spend time with my sister more than I am right now, and being able to be back where I grew up right now would be very comforting to me, but that's not the reality of what's going on right now. So take and realize the blessing that you're sitting in right now as you are in that space, in that time. I know for me, expectations on me from my parents has been something that's kind of always felt like it's hung on me. One of them that I know from my past was I did really well in school and I finished second in my class, and I ended up giving a speech at graduation. And I remember coming into my parents' bedroom around March my senior year, when it was all but said that I was going to be giving a speech, and talking to my parents and kind of trying to reminisce a little bit about what had gone on and what the last 13 plus years had looked like. And I remember my father innocently saying that he was more looking forward to me graduating from college and walking across the college stage than high school. And it was one of those things that unintentionally really affected me all the way through college, that especially when things got tough, I kept thinking about what my father had said and this expectation that he had for me. And it was one of the things that was really difficult for me as I was going through college, when things were already difficult, and then having that sitting there and trying to get into my head further on things that I should be doing or things that are just hard. As I've gotten older and as I've continued to grow, it's still something I work on and wrestle with, and understanding who does God want me to be is when, and we'll get into that more next week, but also understanding that my parents are more having these goals and expectations of me wanting to do well and becoming the best that I can be, and that they're wanting to be there and be the support system for me, not necessarily putting these expectations on me that are just unattainable for me to reach. And as we're going through this, and as you go through this lesson, I'd highly recommend going through it with your parents, because it might be really good to be able to flesh out and talk about some of the expectations that they have for you, and being able to hear a little bit of their perspective on why they have those expectations, but also for the parents to be able to hear what your expectations are, where you're trying to go, so that they can better help guide you in that. And I think it's a really neat lesson this week. The final thing, just to show me that you completed it, is take a group selfie with your family this week and send it to me. I would love to see you working through confirmation together. This is really weird and odd for me as I'm trying to figure out how to do this, but I hope that you are learning and growing in the same way. We're all going through this together. This virus is weird, but it's also opening up a lot of different opportunities. So I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear how I can better connect with you guys. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are of this. So feel free to reach out to me, shoot me an email, shoot me a text message. I'd love to hear from you guys. So dig into this week's lesson, and I'd love to hear what the conversation is between you and your parents are on your expectations. So see you next week.